Trust me, I've heard the Latoya Ammon story. I've heard the story of Latoya. I've heard the Latoya Ammon story. Like from what I heard about the Latoya Ammon story, there was this one incident at the local hospital where I think it was like her youngest son, right? Where I think it was like her youngest son, right? I think it was like her youngest son, right? Like, I think it was like her youngest son, right? Basically, it was like her youngest son, basically started like growling, right? And then he walked backwards up a wall and landed on his own 2 feet without any visible injuries. And then we literally have like a police captain from the town where Latoya Ammons lived at the time, that literally went on the record and said that like Latoya Ammon's children were literally possessed by demons. Yeah, and like this police captain, he literally said, like, this police captain has always maintained in recent years that Latoya Ammon's children, like this police captain, I think his name is Charles Austin. Police Captain Charles Austin has always maintained since what happened with Latoya Ammons, Gary, Indiana Police Captain Charles Austin has always maintained that has always maintained in recent years that he knows for a fact and without a shadow of doubt in his mind that Latoya Ammons and her children were possessed by demons. And I'm also convinced without a shadow of doubt in my mind that Latoya Ammons and her children were literally possessed by demons. There's just no doubt in my mind that the Latoya Ammons case was just not a case of mass hysteria and was a legitimate case of demonic possession and was not just like a case of undiagnosed, untreated mental illness. I mean, it literally is true, bro. Like 70% of the cases that the demonic possession cases the Vatican receives are just cases of undiagnosed, untreated mental illness. But then the other 30% are like the real deal. And I believe that the Latoya Ammons case was part of the 30% of demonic possession cases that are the real deal. Yeah, I believe the Latoya Ammons case was literally just the part of the 30% of cases was part of the 30% of demonic possession cases that literally were legitimate and was just not undiagnosed, untreated mental illness. Yeah. And as a born again Christian, I believe that, and as a born again Christian, I know for a fact that demonic possession is real. I believe demonic possession is real. I believe demonic possession is real. And I believe demonic possession exists across the world, whether we believe it or whether we choose to believe it or not. And I believe that demonic possession is not simply something we can ignore. I believe demonic possession is something that should be taken seriously, and that the warning signs you should not ignore the warning signs. It's kind of the same with undiagnosed, untreated mental illness. I believe that, that signs of undiagnosed, untreated mental illness should be taken seriously. I believe that signs of undiagnosed, untreated mental illness should be taken seriously. I've always believed, in recent years, I've always believed that undiagnosed, untreated mental illness should be taken seriously. I've always believed that undiagnosed, untreated mental illness mental illness is something that should be taken seriously in modern times. Mental illness in psychiatric disorders are something we should take seriously and should not turn our backs to. Especially if it's a serious mental illness, if it's a very serious mental disorder such as PTSD, or especially if it's a very serious psychiatric disorder such as schizophrenia, or PTSD, especially if it's a very serious mental disorder resulting from trauma such as post-traumatic stress disorder. I believe that as a person who has studied the works of people like Sigmund Freud, I believe that that serious psychiatric disorders like PTSD should be taken seriously, and that efforts should be made to help people suffering from PTSD. Just like how I have PTSD, I have PTSD from years of being constantly of having my psychiatric illness constantly ignored, and of not receiving the right kind of help. I feel that, had I just received the right kind of help, I literally would have found the right. I just wouldn't be in the situation I'm in now. I wouldn't have been in the situation I wouldn't have been in the situation I would have been in for the past 5 years. See, that's what I'm saying, bro, is had Westlake High School just gotten me more professional help, I feel like I literally wouldn't be in the situation. I wouldn't be in the situation I was in. I literally feel like I wouldn't have been in the situation I would have been in from beginning, and I feel like I wouldn't have been in the situation I would have been in I wouldn't have been in the situation I was in the past 10 years. I feel like I would have gotten more I would have found people who were professional, and I would have gotten, yeah. 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 I mean, for me, I feel like there's only so much someone can take before they ultimately break. And for me, I feel like I ultimately went past that limit. I feel like I ultimately went past that limit. I feel like I just ultimately, I feel like I ultimately just went past that limit. I feel like I ultimately just went past that limit. I feel like I ultimately yeah, and I realized now yeah, and I realized that yeah, and I realized that not that someone can only take so much before they ultimately break. And I was literally almost at my breaking point. Right before I started back at LifeWorks, I was almost yeah, and I realized, that I realize, that I realize now that I realize that, I realize now that, I realize now that I realize now that, that, there really are destructive individuals in this world. I realize now there are destructive individuals in this world. There really are I realize now there are there really are bloodthirsty individuals in this world. I realize now there really are bloodthirsty individuals in this world. And I've realized now that there really are, just really they're truly bloodthirsty individuals. There really are just bloodthirsty individuals in this world. That there are bloodthirsty individuals in this. That there are bloodthirsty individuals. That there are bloodthirsty individuals in this world. I realize now that there are. I realize now that there really are bloodthirsty individuals in this world. And that there are people who are hell-bent on causing and inflicting pain on other people. But what can I do about it? I realize that I just have to deal with it, I realize that with each day that comes, probably there's always going to be a bloodthirsty individual born somewhere in the world. There's always going to be I realize that bloodthirsty individuals are born almost every set. Bloodthirsty individuals are born almost every second of the day, somewhere in the world. Yeah. And it's just up to us to decide how we react to those bloodthirsty individuals. Yeah.